time for the Panthers in Germany. The Jets forgot they actually have to show up to Arizona to play football. And it leads to this question we're going to talk about today, because we're tired of talking about the Giants and Jets constantly losing. Which team would you rather be in the next 2 to 3 years? I'm not talking 5, 6 years, 2 to 3 years. I think you could make an argument for both sides. I'll give you my answer to that question. If both teams are set to make some, at least one's going to make a big change, I'm going to let the other one. Knicks, a little bit of struggles early trying to get chemistry with the new group. They moved Indiana yesterday. We'll talk about the moves they can make to help the team. Brooklyn, competitive in losses, really good sign for this team. We'll talk about the locals in the NHL. We'll talk about NYCFC advancing to the semifinals, conference semifinals, where they'll play the Red Bulls in 2 weeks. The Hudson River Derby playoff matchup is fun. Gotham FC wins the next in the waiting minutes yesterday to get to the semifinals. Mets and Yankees line up for Soto, as well as college football and college basketball updates. Those all coming up next in New York State Sports. We'll see you in just a minute. And of course, welcome back here to New York State Sports, IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. Ricky K with you today on this Veterans Day. And of course, we want to thank all of our men and women in the armed forces that are protecting our freedom on this day. So thank you to all of you out there that are serving, have served, know someone who is serving. It's a great debt of gratitude to you on this day and every day here in this country. I want to remind you, of course, you can follow us on X, IG, Facebook, TikTok. Just go to @IE Sports Radio. Subscribe on YouTube. All of our live shows are here. Check out a different show every day. We got some new shows coming that are going to be exciting for the network. You can also go to, as you'll see on the bottom of the screen, each of our shows has a page on the website. Mine here, iesportsradio.com/NY State of Sports. You can also follow me on X @Rickinator555. You can follow the show @NY State Sports. I actually put a poll question out there yesterday. Which New York team would you rather be? The Giants or the Jets? And that is a very difficult question that we're going to dive into, really what that actually is or how you really define that question. Because I'm not going to sit here and go through loss after loss after loss after loss for both these football teams. I'm not going to do it. At some point, you got to talk about what the long-term future is for both these teams, and we're going to get into that as well. But if you missed any part of the show or you just want to hear me yell again, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all those fun places you get your podcasts. So be sure to check that out. So we'll take our first break to hear from our sponsors, and when we will be back, and we will talk about both New York football teams and their inconsistencies, and we'll answer that question. I want to get your thoughts. If you have, what are you thinking, Giants or Jets? Who would you rather be? Either comment here on YouTube or, again, tweet @NY State Sports IE. You can read some of your answers here. But we'll be right back in just a minute.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram @PlanetJerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And a special thanks to our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, for all your awesome snack needs during the football season and any sports you want to watch, especially the soccer going on. Seal the Deal Wax Seals for all your wedding invitations, events, all those fun things. And then, man, check out the shop. Get cool merch, t-shirts, hats, all those fun things here at IE Sports Radio. It goes a long way to supporting what we all do here hosting on the show. I'm going to lead with the Jets. It was about picking the worst of the two evils, and I think the Jets are. And of course, Alden from our Arizona show, AZ Sports Zone, is here. Thank you for tuning in, Alden. Thank you for not gloating here on the show. And look, the fact of the matter is, you look at this Jet team, and they came off a big high second half against the Texans. They seemed to have found something, and everything kind of broke in their favor in the 1 o'clock games to get back into the mix. You had the Broncos lose in Kansas City on that blocked field goal. You had the Colts lose to the Bills. You had the Bengals lose to the Ravens on Thursday, where if the Jets had just won yesterday, they would be only one game out of a playoff spot. Now, they would have be down with Denver with the tiebreaker, but they would have put themselves back in the conversation. And we said they needed 2 wins against the Cardinals and the Colts to get to 5-6 at the bye, which if you had gotten through yesterday, and Arizona's a tough team, you could make the argument that, hey, they have an opportunity to get back in it. The worst of their schedule's behind them. Things go in the right direction. And it's just gone backwards. And what strikes me with the Jets is it's not even the offense that's the biggest concern with this team. It's the defense. This defense is awful. And this was a defense that was supposed to really carry this team and be kind of the linchpin to helping a 40-year-old veteran quarterback. And it just hasn't. You look at what the Cardinals did yesterday. They rushed it 32 times for 147 yards. Sauce Gardner doesn't even want to tackle. Like Trey McBride just ran over him. And you talk about a guy in Sauce Gardner that expects to be one of the better corners in the league. He hasn't been playing like it. You had a defense that sacked Kyler Murray one time yesterday that allowed Kyler Murray to complete 17 straight passes. That's a Cardinals franchise record. Passing Carson Palmer. He only threw 2 incomplete passes the entire game. It's the Jet defense that only has 2 interceptions this year. The team that's worse than that is the Giants, who have 1 interception this year. So that's taking the ball away. And you look at what the Jets should have been. Extra rest, prepared, and it's the second time they've done this year. They had the great Thursday game against the Patriots, had 10 days to prepare for Denver. I don't care about the rain. I don't care about bad weather. I don't care about any of that. You lost to Bo Nix in a game where you had like negative passing yards in the first half. And then yesterday, 10 days to prepare for the Cardinals, coming off a good second half against the Texans. Team was in a good mood, and it feels like this team reads their press clippings way too much. They get way too high or they get way too low. There's no middle ground. And to be a good football team, you have to have a middle ground. You can't get too high after wins. You can't get too low after losses. And to lay that big of an egg yesterday, where the Cardinals didn't punt until the fourth quarter. That game was over at 14-3 in the first quarter. It was over. And you look at a Jet team that was 6 of 13 on third down. They did only commit 3 penalties yesterday, but Aaron Rodgers does not throw a touchdown. Only 150 yards passing for the day. They don't run the football anymore. Breece Hall got 10 carries the entire day. There's no balance with this group. And you can throw the ball to Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson all you want. If there's nothing you have really in terms of balance, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, they forget there's an all-pro back there. And look, Jeff Ulbrich is doing the best he can. Like, I'm not going to say he's not the coach of the future. Everybody knows it. But this is a team that made the decision to get rid of Robert Saleh, and they've looked worse since they've done that. And they pinned it all on the head coach. Pinned it all on an offensive coordinator spot that they didn't want to take Nate Hackett away. They put Todd Downing there. Has it really been any better? Not really. I mean, outside one half, and you watched the Texans last night on NBC. CJ Stroud looks a lot different without Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. That's just the way to explain it. Like, that's why the Jets were favored last week. Houston was not what they were at the beginning of the year. But to blow that big of an opportunity, and look, the Jets next week, they'll take on the Colts in a game that, thank God, isn't flexed because nobody wanted to watch Joe Flacco against Aaron Rodgers on Sunday Night Football. They put Bengals Chargers there. At least you get Burrow against Herbert. But again, that's a winnable game for the Jets. Winnable game for the Colts, too. Jets are favored by 3 as of right now. But again, what does that say to this group that has underachieved dramatically, that is going to clean house, both in the head coaching spot and GM spot? Their owner is probably going to be the ambassador to the UK again for President Trump. And it goes back to, okay, what is the future of this franchise? Because we got to stop talking playoffs with this group. I ruled them dead 2 weeks ago, but they still had a shot yesterday. Like right now, again, the 7th seed is Denver. They're 2 back, 3 technically with the tiebreaker. And Denver doesn't have many losable games left. They're still behind the Bengals. They're still behind Indianapolis. They're still behind Indianapolis, 4-6. That's how bad the bottom of the AFC is, people. As good as Kansas City and Buffalo and Pittsburgh and Baltimore, they have the Chargers credit too. They're 6-3 and nobody talks about them. The bottom of the AFC from Denver on down is average. And the Jets won't crack the playoffs in a year that they could have won 8-9 games and made it. I mean, that's how bad this group is. And I don't see where it's going to get fixed, but really, to me, it's the defense. Like, I think that's the most disappointing thing. This defense just didn't show up in a game they absolutely had to have. So that's what I'm going to point the fingers at more so than the offense. And I'm going to do the same thing for the Giants, too. Because, look, you can talk about that's a game you can't lose yesterday. You can't lose to the Panthers in Germany. I know Bryce Young won last week against the Saints, things were looking better for Carolina. But for a Giant team that really hasn't done much, and I'm going to talk about Daniel Jones a little bit. 22 of 37, 190 yards. He did have 2 interceptions. One being that 3rd and 7 to Tyrone Tracy, which is in the red zone, giving up points. You can't do that. One got tipped by Clowney and got intercepted. But we could go back to the flea flicker that the Giants decided to run on 3rd and 6 inches yesterday, which to me was probably the dumbest play call you could have. And yes, you could say that Neighbors is wide open or Wan'Dale Robinson's wide open, but just pick up the yard. Like, why does Brian Daboll feel the need to be creative in an offense that can't stretch the field? You got to know your quarterback. Daniel Jones does a better job on the run, running the football than he does throwing the ball. He gets more comfortable when he does design quarterback runs than when he does throwing. And this is an offense that can't get the ball downfield. And I think it's knowing your team's strengths and limitations. Look, they were running the ball very well yesterday. Tyrone Tracy had 103 yards rushing. He did have the touchdown, the 32-yard run that got him on the board. And I think he was the lone bright spot yesterday. He did have the fumble the first play of overtime, which it took the Giants forever and a day just to drive down the field, kick a field goal with Graham Gano, who was back yesterday. But Tracy at least gives explosiveness to this team. You saw Jalen Hyatt get to play because Darius Slayton was out. He had 4 catches for 39. They tried to hit him downfield early in the game on the first play. Malik Neighbors hasn't had a touchdown the last few games. I mean, not a bad game yesterday. 6 catches for 50 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson, 5 catches for 51. Giants made some changes on the offensive line, which I thought helped. Illuminor was at the left tackle spot. Evan Neal was at right tackle. Jones got sacked twice. So a little bit better protection scheme from the offensive line. But I'm going to blame the defense yesterday. You had a defense that's one of the better ones in the league that sacked Bryce Young 1 time. The Chuba Hubbard is still running on the Giants. They had 32 carries for 188 as a team. Hubbard had 28 carries. 28 for 153 yards and a touchdown. That's a Giant front 7 that's better than that. One of the better pass rush defenses in the league. You can't get it done. They're 2-8. Their season's over. They're going to the bye week. They'll play Tampa in a couple weeks. But leads you to this question. Who would you rather be? The Giants or the Jets? Jets, at least you know, are going to have a new head coach. They're probably going to have a new GM. I can't see Joe Douglas lasting through this. So, and as I said, Christopher Johnson takes over if Woody Johnson becomes the ambassador. And at least while Christopher Johnson, it's still in the family, I don't think he's as meddling as Woody is. You still have Aaron Rodgers for 1 more year because I don't think they'll eat that dead money. So you still have Garrett Wilson. You still have Devontae Adams. You still have Breece Hall. If you can fix the defense in some way, shape, or form, the offensive line, I think Fashanu is doing some good things. They have Elijah Vera Tucker. There's pieces there. As I said, a bottom of the AFC that's not very good. I mean, you still have Mahomes, you still have Josh Allen, you still have Burrow, you still have Lamar, you still have Herbert. There's still a lot of good quarterbacks. When you look at the AFC as a whole, Buffalo's still there, but what's Miami going forward? What's New England going forward? Jake May looks good, but the Patriots still have a lot of pieces they have to fix. So there's still a path, I think, for the Jets to be competitive, and at least they know they have to make changes. Now, do they get those changes right? We'll see. We could evaluate the coaching candidates at another time as they become available. And who would you want as the coach? I mean, everyone's going to want Ben Johnson, former Jet Aaron Glenn, even though he'd be a defensive coordinator for the Lions, even though first-time coach. That's the guy they probably could look at. But I'd rather be the Jets. I think the Giants are in denial of what they are. And John Mara has given GM Joe Schoen and Coach Brian Daboll saying they're not most likely not going to make changes mid-season or at the end of the year. But why does Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll get a pass for Daniel Jones? They knew his limitations. They knew when they made the playoffs a couple of years ago that really Jones wasn't the reason why. And they chose to reinvest. Now, they reinvested with a deal they can get out of at the end of the year. But as Shane and Daboll earned the right to get a chance with a rookie quarterback. I mean, look at Joe Shane's moves. Deonte Banks got benched again yesterday. That's the top corner they drafted. Andrew Thomas is hurt. You can't really blame him for that. But you look at this group, like, has Joe Shane really made this roster that much better? Neighbors is good. And it's time to stop blaming Dave Gettleman. The only reason that Daniel Jones would be still the quarterback next week or 2 weeks from now when they host Tampa is because Jones represents a safety net for the Giants to just pin all the blame on him, and that's not fair. What's the head coach done? Ask yourself this. Has the offense looked better this year than it did under Mike Kafka last year? Because Brian Daboll took the play calling for himself, said, I'm going to do it. So what I want to see, to say Brian Daboll should be the coach, put Drew Lock back there. And if this offense looks slightly better, then you can understand the head coach gets really no blame in it. But if you put Lock or Tommy DeVito there and they still stink, then it's not the quarterbacks. It's the coach. And you got a chance, really. And look at the NFC East. Jay Daniels is there in Washington. Jalen Hurts is there in Philly. You could argue Dallas, but Dallas has had a lot of injuries. The path for the Jets to get back to the AFC East is better than the path of the Giants in the NFC East. And it's sad that we have to watch on Thanksgiving a Dak-less Dallas Cowboys against a sad New York Giants team. Like, that's when I wish they could flex out of Thanksgiving. That's an awful football game. That's what the Giants are right now. I've got their schedule out in front of me. I mean, is the Tampa game winnable? Is the New Orleans game winnable? Saints won yesterday without their first game without Dennis Allen. Maybe the Colts game, but they can't stop Jonathan Taylor. The Giants are looking at a 3-4 win season. Jets might look at a 5-6 win season. Who's the quarterback next year for the Giants? Is it Cam Ward? Is it Shedeur Sanders? Who is it? I think the Jets have more answers than the Giants. I just do. I think there's a better path to build, at least knowing you have Rodgers and to build with him, then you're not sure what the heck it's going to look like. And if Daboll's made a lame duck coach, I mean, look at what Caleb Williams is doing within Chicago with Matt Eberflus. They kept him, gave him a rookie quarterback, and it looks like that has not going to work. Larry, you're right on Sauce Gardner. He just holds and gets ran over. That's really been an issue for Sauce this year. I agree, Alden. I think Tracy's been really good. He's going to be, I think, a really big part of this team's future. He became a running back last year in college, and he's became a really a linchpin for this Giants offense. At least they found a running back to build around to go with the veteran Singletary. And I'd have to do research on this before the next time that they play. Is Giants-Cowboys the worst Thanksgiving game ever? I mean, that's saying something. So we've had some did we have some winless Lions teams play on Thanksgiving in the past? That is interesting. But again, let me know. What teams do you think is in a better position in the next 2-3 years? Is it the Giants or is it the Jets? So I think you make an argument for both, but I would say the Jets, I think, are in a better spot right now. So let's take our first break. We'll come back. Our first break here about some of our shows here on the network. And we'll talk about some basketball and some hockey. Knicks not really clicking the way people would have hoped. Nets are playing hard, and the local hockey teams, Rangers, are set for a really tough test tomorrow with the Jets team that's actually good in sports. You're listening to New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio. We'll be right back in just a minute.
Hockey fans, I'm Adam Kernan.
And I'm Zach Puplis.
Together, we are the newest version of Hockey Talk on IE Sports Radio, The Neutral Zone.
Zone.
We love hockey, but we also know it's not everyone's first sport. So we want to make this show as much for new fans as for the diehards.
Whether you can name all the Swedes on the '08 Red Wings Stanley Cup team, or if you can't tell if Varlamov is a goalie or the latest trendy vodka, we're here to help. With facts, figures, and outrageous fans, we bring you all the hard-hitting hockey news you can handle, while still keeping it fun and on the rails. Well, mostly.
So tune in every week as we go around the hockey world, from college to Canada, the minors and the majors, and everywhere in between.
So bring your cellies,
And your one-timers,
you wicked wristas.
and be sure to protect your five-hole.
Catch the Neutral Zone every week on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
We promise not to pick on the Arizona Coyotes every episode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr., and I'm welcoming you to take another lap with the fastest show on IE Sports Radio. Yes, this is the Extra Mile with me and my co-hosts Christopher Lehman and Michael Ward. We talk everything racing from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula One to limited hydroplanes, endurance racing, the NHRA, and more. So come join us for an hour of great racing talk and a lot of fun as well on the Extra Mile, Thursdays at 8 p.m. only on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back here to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. Breaking care with you. NASCAR season wrapped up yesterday, so you'll hear Darryl and the gang talk about Joey Logano's title defense on Thursday's show, I'm sure. Good wrap up to the season. As we shift gears from NASCAR to, not NASCAR, we'll shift gears from NASCAR and the NFL conversation to the NBA. And we'll start with the Knicks. Had a tough game yesterday at Indiana, rematch of the playoff series last year. And this was a rough week for the Knicks. They lost all three of their road games. They did beat the Bucks on Friday. They took advantage of Doc Rivers being awful as a coach. I mean, how do you let Brook Lopez continue to guard Karl Anthony Towns when you have Giannis? And then Giannis basically saying, if you don't like it, there's the door after the game. We talked about the Giannis stuff last week. That could be coming to a head. Maybe not soon, but I mean, one of the locals, I think, would be lucky to get their hands on him. But if you go to yesterday, Knicks had a winnable game. Had the lead after three quarters, and they didn't defend the three. Pacers hit 8 3-pointers in the fourth quarter yesterday. The Knicks made 1. Now that's what the NBA has become nowadays. But Tyrese Haliburton had 0 points the first time these two teams played in the second game of the year. Yesterday he had 35 on 11 of 18 shooting. Benedict Mathurin, 38 points, 7 of 9 from 3. Miles Turner had 5 threes. He had 26 points. This is an Indiana team that, again, got essentially almost 100 points from 3 players. You got to think of it that way. That you look at this Knicks team that was 7 of 25 from downtown yesterday. They're not defending well. And I think the one thing you look at with this team, I'm not going to overreact to 4 and 5, but they have no depth. Now, you gave up that depth when you traded 5 first-rounders to get Mikal Bridges. You gave up that depth when you traded DiVincenzo and Randall to get Karl Anthony Towns. So there's going to be some growing pains with this group. But you're only playing Deuce McBride 29 minutes. Tyler Kolek, who's a good three-point shooter, is only seeing 2 minutes as a rookie. Jericho Sims only seen 9 minutes. When this team has no front court depth to begin with, Precious Achiuwa is still out. It sounds like Cam Payne might get back faster than Achiuwa, which is a bigger concern for this team. That they need Precious Achiuwa back. I think people underestimated Achiuwa's absence coupled with Mitch Robinson's absence. They don't have anybody to defend the paint. I mean, yesterday they did out-rebound the Pacers 39-32, but 10 of those rebounds are Josh Hart. So with Hart's not getting the rebounds, you're going to get out-rebounded more often than not. And this is a team that has to kind of get that chemistry clicking a little bit. They'll find it, but again, bad loss when you had the lead against Indiana yesterday. They played Atlanta earlier in the week, had the lead going into the fourth quarter, and got outscored 32-27 in the fourth, lost by 5. The number one pick had 33 points. They played Houston. Game before that, Knicks were right in the game, down by 4 going to the fourth. Rockets outscore them 28-22. Knicks lose by 12. That's what it is right now. And again, you look around the East and outside of Boston and Cleveland, nobody's really running away with anything. But the East is where, hey, you're going to get a competitive effort from these bad teams every now and then. You've got to be able to match that effort. Knicks usually do. I'm not going to sit here and blame Tom Thibodeau for that. But I will blame Thibodeau for you've got to play some of these guys off the bench, whether it's Dottier, whether it's Matt Ryan, whoever it is. Like, they've got to get guys some minutes just so you can spell Brunson and Towns and Hart and those guys just for a little bit. Now, the Knicks are back in action Tuesday. They'll play in Philly. Start of the NBA Cup. Philly's been awful. I think Embiid might be back for that game, back from his suspension. They barely beat Charlotte last night, but that's time to take advantage of a bad Philly team. They play Chicago on Wednesday at home and then continue the NBA Cup with a game against Brooklyn at the Garden on Friday, and they'll play Brooklyn again on Sunday. So those are your 4 matchups, and we'll come back next week with the Knicks hosting the Wizards. So some winnable games. And Larry says the Knicks are confusing. Do they want to be good or bad this season? Again, it's 9 games. I got to look at this team. Let's see where the Knicks are at Christmas. Give them a month. Give them a chance to figure things out. Again, their schedule is going to get a little bit easier after these last 2 games. Keep in mind they played Cleveland already. They played Boston already. They played Indiana twice. They played Miami. I want to see them actually run through a couple of these bad teams. Like, hey, we got Philly, Chicago, who's 4-6, and Brooklyn, who's 4-6 next couple games. Win a couple games this week. If they don't, now we can talk about, hey, really how bad this team actually is. T5 is in the house. Yep, Giants, Saints in a few weeks. That game will be fun for, well, maybe just Giants and Saints fans, but we will see. Brooklyn, on the other hand, I've actually been impressed with the Nets. And it's the Nets team, again, not a lot of expectations. Teams are not expecting the Nets to light the world on fire. Again, everyone's talking about, hey, they got to tank and get one of these top 3 picks, or they get Cooper Flagg or get one of these freshmen from Rutgers. But you look at what Brooklyn has done over the last few games, and they beat Memphis last week in a tough game. They swept the Grizzlies. And then you look at their performances the last couple of nights. They play the Celtics, who, yes, don't have Jaylen Brown, but took them to overtime. Played a really competitive game on the road, 31 points from Cam Thomas. It's a net team that actually had 100 shots up in the game and out-rebounded Boston 51-39. So very, very competitive effort by the Nets. They had 12 offensive rebounds, got 20 points off of turnovers. Overall, not and against the defending champs, you can't ask for much more. Then on a back-to-back, going to Cleveland, who's undefeated, they won a 27-5 run, outscore Cleveland 27-13 in the third quarter, and put themselves in position to win. And Jordi Fernandez, the head coach, said maybe he ran the top guys a little bit too long. Dennis Schroeder had 37 minutes, Cam Thomas 37 minutes. Both had 22 points. Cam Johnson had 23. But you do have to wonder if they're kind of riding a little bit on those 5 guys when the bench still hasn't given them much with Clowney and Milton and Zaire Williams. There was nothing there, so he had to go through with the starters. But you're seeing a Jordi Fernandez group in his first year. The offense, at least you're seeing a competitive Nets team. And I think this is a group that is going to at least be in games. That's all you want as a Nets fan, is for them to be competitive. Maybe some of these guys get traded, and you at least build to get a top 3 to 5 pick, but you know you got the coach. That's kind of the thing this year, is I want to know who's going to be the pieces going forward and who's going to be the coach. On-court results don't necessarily matter too much, but even Fernandez was like, I can't accept a moral victory against Cleveland, which I want to hear from my coach. I want to hear, hey, we missed an opportunity to win this game. Let's look at the NHL and some of the local teams, see what's going on there. Rangers had a really rough one in Buffalo not in Buffalo, but at the Garden against the Sabres the other day, where Igor Shesterkin allows 5 goals on 12 shots. But a good bounce-back performance on Saturday against the Red Wings. It wasn't Igor, though. Jonathan Quick, 37 saves and a shutout, and it's good to have a backup goaltender that can kind of give Igor a breather. Red Wings are putting shots galore up, and Quick was just making big save after big save. Rangers got some goals finally in the second period from the likes of Jimmy Vesey. Artemi Panarin had a power play goal. Well, not a power play, regular goal. Kreider had a power play goal in the first, and an empty netter from Riley Smith. So the Rangers, mixed bag of results this week. They're 9-3-1. And then they have their really, I think, biggest litmus test. We saw them fail the litmus test against Florida. They'll take on a Winnipeg team that is 14-1. Best start in NHL history. The Winnipeg Jets, the Jets that are actually good through the first 15 games. This is going to be a really competitive game. Connor Hellebuyck is playing really well, 11-1, or 1.83 goals against average. Love to see him go against Igor in this one. We'll see if the Jets play their starting goaltender, but Igor will look for a bounce back at home. You don't get a lot of litmus tests in the regular season, but this is one for the Rangers for sure. They will host the Sharks on Thursday, and then they will go out west to begin a West Coast trip against the Kraken. That game will be late Sunday night at 9 o'clock Eastern. Devils, good comeback win against the Islanders. It was a 3-1 game with 10 minutes to go in the third period on Saturday, and they found a way to win 4-3. Dawson Mercer with a goal with about 4 and change to go. Stefan Noesen ties it with the extra man with a minute to go. Jack Hughes, 2 goals in this one, wins it in OT. But then they can't win in the back-to-back last night. They lose 1-0. Nico Sturm, the only goal for San Jose late in the first period. 44 saves from Mackenzie Blackwood. Jake Allen had 26, not a bad effort from him. For the Devils, that's a game you should win against the Sharks, even though they did play well against Edmonton last week. Canadian series, they either got shut out or were shutting people out, and then they beat Montreal at home 5-3 on November 7th. Devils are at Florida to pick up the Panthers tomorrow and Thursday. 2 games in Florida. They actually will play and be in Florida all week to play the Lightning on Saturday. Islanders, again, they've got a lot of injuries. It's hard to really accept that, hey, this team has to just stay afloat while Duclair's out and Barzal's out. But they found a way to win a couple of games this week. They beat the Penguins in a shootout last Tuesday, 4-3. They beat Ottawa 4-2 on Thursday. And then we talk about they at least get a point against New Jersey, but that's one where you want to win, especially when you have a 3-1 lead halfway through the third period. But the guy that has stood out for this Islanders team is Isaiah George. Now, Isaiah George has gotten a lot of time on the ice because of these injuries, but this is a player that I think could really make noise. He's just 20 years old. Of course, was called up from Bridgeport, which is the AHL team. And he has been, I think, really a boost for this group, where he has just found a way to maybe give that spark. He's 196 pounds, 98th pick back in 2022, lefty shot. And you look at what he did against Ottawa. He had 24 minutes of ice time against Ottawa, 24 minutes of ice time against New Jersey. So Patrick Roy is giving this guy a lot of ice time. And he doesn't have to be the scorer. Remember, you still have Bo Horvat. You still have Wallstrom. There are guys, Palmieri, Anders Lee. You still have guys who can put the puck in the net. But if George could be that spark plug defensively, I think they would absolutely take it. Islanders this week, we'll get you their schedule. They play the Oilers on Tuesday in Edmonton. They play Vancouver on Thursday, and then they play the Kraken on Saturday. So Islanders on a 4-game West Coast trip this week. Rangers will start theirs late this week, early next week. So we go back to that poll. 60% would rather be the Giants. I could see that just because there's a shot at a rookie quarterback. I think it's the optimism of the unknown of the rookie more so than watching Aaron Rodgers. Like, to me, I would consider, like, I'm watching the Colorado and I'm thinking, man, would Shedeur Sanders ever force his way to the Giants? Could Deion get him to do that? If you're the Giants, like, I would rather play Daniel Jones if I didn't worry about the injury guarantees and lose and start Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito, win 2-3 games and cost myself a quarterback. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And Joe Schoen, they clearly want a quarterback. And I blame Joe Schoen also for the fact that they basically, through hard knocks and all that stuff, told Daniel Jones he wasn't very good, yet still started him anyway this year. If you're going to bring in Drew Lock, why not just play Drew Lock? They basically gave Daniel Jones zero confidence to work with. And I know it's his 6th year and he's got to figure things out. I'm not absolving him of blame at all. But I'm not going to pin everything on him either. You have to find a mix. So we'll take one more break. We'll do our grab bag segment coming up. We'll talk soccer, a momentous week in soccer here in New York. We'll talk college football, college basketball. I had a little Mets and Yankees update. No big signings yet, but a couple of interesting tidbits of news that we'll dive into. You're listening to New York State Sports here on IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey sports fans, are you in the market for Florida sports or just keeping up with the latest in the Panhandle? Palm Tree Sports is a dedicated audio hub to all things sports in the Sunshine State. We cover current events, big news, heavily favored opinions all across the NFL, NBA, MLB, and so much more. So come check us out every Saturday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a down south education on Florida sports and athletics. It's hosted by yours truly, Corey Pujols, and is powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on The Defining Moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
And welcome back to New York State Sports Night, Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. It's great to see The Defining Moment back on the network yesterday. And I would say top 5 theme song on the network. Every time that song's on, it's very catchy. You start dancing in your seat or wherever you are in your car or wherever you're watching these shows. It's a whole lot of fun. So again, in case you're not familiar, this is the grab bag segment. We kind of go around and talk about some of the other sports in the final segment of the show. We got a lot to get into this week. And we're going to lead with soccer. 2 New York teams are in the Final Four in the Eastern Conference for a right to go to the MLS Cup. And NYCFC found a way to win Saturday on the road in Cincinnati despite having 1 shot on goal. Just 1. Matt Freese stopped all 4 shots he faced. And you're seeing why Matt Freese is one of the best goaltenders in the MLS. I mean, he helped this team stay in it. And then Matija Elenic scored in the 9th round of PKs. And NYCFC on an 18-kick penalty shootout advances to the quarterfinals. You had Eastern Conference semifinals. You had Nick Cushing, the coach this week, kind of deny rumors that he was going to become the new coach, the women's coach at Arsenal. And this is an NYCFC team that struggled to score goals, but they've done really well in penalties. If you go back to Leagues Cup, they beat Querétaro 4-3 in PKs back in July. They also won a 7-6 penalty kick shootout against New England in the round of 32. And then the quarterfinals, they lost to Columbus, but in 4-3 in PKs. So 2-1 in PKs this year. This is a team that has kind of grown in confidence. And I look at this team, they're not going to get a lot of goals, but they're very good defensively. Between Santi Rodriguez and Maxi Morales, they're going to put the ball on the net. But you look at this series, they lost 1-0 in the first game on the road. And then they found a way to put 3 on net, but that's not like them. I mean, look at the guys that scored at least the first half of that game in Game 2 at Yankee Stadium. It was Adrian Martinez and Thiago Martins, and Martins hadn't really done much this year. Which sets up an epic semifinal. Now, remember, it's a one-game playoff now the rest of the way. But November 23rd, we'll preview the matchup more next week. NYCFC versus New York Red Bulls. Now, this was a matter of where this game would be. Yankee Stadium, of course, will have Army Notre Dame that night, and we're going to preview that next week, too, because that's an epic game in the Bronx between two teams that will likely, hopefully, at least in the AP poll, be in the top 15. Citi Field has a circus, literal circus in the parking lot, but the game will be at Citi Field, 5:30 Eastern on the 23rd. And this is going to be a fun game, I think, locally, because one of these teams are going to make it. And you look at the Eastern Conference right now, the top 3 seeds are out. Miami, Columbus, Cincy, out. You have the 4, the 6, the 7, and the 9 left. So the winner of this game has a really good chance to make the final. Now, the West is more stacked. But if you remember we did our MLS preview back in March, and both these teams were projected around middle of the pack in the East. But I don't think anybody thought that these two would be playing for a chance at an Eastern Conference final. And it's bigger, I think, for the Red Bulls. Look, NYCFC has at least won a title in the last couple of years. Red Bulls have the stadium, yes. But I think now that the Red Bulls are whole and they've got Forsberg back and they've got Lewis Morgan cooking, like, they're the team that should win this game. They're the team with more firepower. But can NYCFC defend enough and turn this into where Matt Freese can steal the game? We'll see. And another great event at Red Bull Arena yesterday was the Gotham FC Portland Thorns matchup in the NWSL quarterfinal. And a really momentous second half. It was scoreless throughout, and Tierna Davidson scored in the 67th minute to make it 1-0. Portland rallied back. Rylan Turner scored 8 minutes later to tie it. And then one of Team USA's greats, Rose Lavelle, in the 7th minute of the stoppage time, puts in the game winner in a second half that had 15 minutes stoppage time. And Gotham had 16 shot attempts, 5 shots on goal, but they advanced the defending champs to the semifinal. They're going to be taking on the Washington Spirit. That game is at noon on Saturday on CBS. Trinity Rodman is going to be the player you watch for in that game. She's got 8 goals in 23 matches this year. These two teams have played 3 times. Spirit beat Gotham FC 2-0 in April 20th and 2-0 on June 23rd. July 28th, Gotham won 1-0. So it's 1-0, 2-0 kind of game. The game is in DC at Audi Arena, but good luck to Gotham FC, and hopefully they find a way to take home at least a trip to the NWSL final, which would be a whole lot of fun for sure. And this is a fun group. I mean, they got to think of, was it 15? I had a friend who went to the game yesterday. Had about 15,000 people at that game yesterday, packing Red Bull Arena. So that's a win for NWSL in itself that they got that many people out to the game. Moving on to college football, and Army staying undefeated. I mean, this is a really good story. I think, again, one of the better stories in college football that isn't talked about enough in a wild year. They took on the Mean Green North Texas. Bryson Daly was back. Daly didn't play great. He did run the ball 36 times, 153 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Army had 64 carries in this game. But they did a good job against North Texas. while they only had 1 sack, you look at the Mean Green, they only had 69 yards rushing as a team. 2 picks against Chandler Morris, including one in the end zone. And what Army did in the fourth quarter, they got the ball with 10:37 left in the third quarter. They had a 21-play, 94-yard drive that took 14 minutes off the clock. That's got to steal a team's soul away when that happens. So the Black Knights are 9-0. They have one more conference game left. That's in a couple weeks against the Roadrunners of UTSA, but it sets up for an epic matchup. November 23rd, Yankee Stadium, 7 o'clock on NBC, Army at Notre Dame. Now, Army's kind of in a bad place because Boise State keeps winning and Ashton Genty's trying to win the Heisman. That if Boise wins out, they're going to get in the playoff. But if I'm one of these teams, I wouldn't want to play Army in a playoff. Notre Dame might beat them. I don't think they're going to blow out Army the way Notre Dame blew out Navy. I think this defense is really good, and I think Daly is showing some things at the quarterback position. They're going to have to throw a little bit, and I don't think Army will win, but I think they'll keep it competitive. Moving on to the Big Ten and Rutgers, they get a little bit closer to bowl eligibility, and they had a really big win on NBC against Minnesota. 26-19 was the final on Saturday. Ethan Kaliakmanis played against his former team. Needed a big game. He's had a rough year offensively. He had 3 touchdowns, 17 of 33 for 240. Demir Miller caught 2 of those scores, so Rutgers is now 5-4. They need to win 1 of their last 3 to get bowl eligible. They have at Maryland on Saturday. They're home to Illinois the following week, and then at Michigan State. So Illinois used to be ranked. They've struggled of late. So Greg Schiano, I think, should find a way to win one of those games and get Rutgers to a bowl game. Meanwhile, Syracuse, they took a tough loss at Boston College. Cuse has lost 2 out of 3, which is not what you want to see, especially as the ACC continues to get wide open. Kyle McCord, 31 of 48 for 392, 2 touchdowns, but Syracuse didn't run the football. Quint Allen, who did have 2 scores, but just 50 yards rushing. And when Syracuse was clicking, LaQuint Allen was the one getting a lot of carries and providing more balance for this team. But you allowed BC to score 37 points. Syracuse had 10 penalties in this one. You can't give teams extra yards. And Boston College just ran roughshod on them for 313 yards. Not a good effort against Bill O'Brien's squad. So next week, Syracuse will take on Cal. It's at 3 Eastern on Saturday. Cuse right now is underdogs by a touchdown in that game. Moving on to college basketball. We got the season started last week. Could be a lot of interesting matchups as we get going with this slate, and not a good week for Seton Hall. They almost lost to St. Peter's in their first game, and then they took on Fordham over the weekend. Fordham got the doors blown off them by St. John's. Seton Hall took them on at the Walsh Gym, so it wasn't a game at Prudential, and they ended up losing at the buzzer to Fordham. Fordham's beaten St. John's in the past. We've beaten a Big East team in the past. They beat St. John's back when I was in school a few years ago. So it's not shocking it's shocking when Fordham wins a game like that. That was on Saturday, 57-56. But it's a Seton Hall team that we talked about, a team that doesn't have a lot of experience, a team that's going to have to grow as a unit. Scotty Middleton didn't have a point the other day. Their leading scorer had 10 points. Seton Hall only took 9 threes. They made 4 of them, but just growing pains for Shaheen Holloway in a tough year in the Big East. So not a shock, but disappointing to say the least. St. John's, they beat Fordham, as I mentioned, then they were down at the half against Quinnipiac on Saturday, and then they stormed back for 61 points in the second half. RJ Lewis, who had a bad technical in the first game, had 24 points, 13 boards. You're seeing St. John's depth because Kadary Richmond did nothing, and they almost scored 100 points. Brady Dunlap hit 5 threes off the bench. That's a guy that kind of disappeared last year, would have a great game and not have a great game. Simeon Wilcher is coming to his own and played well. Devion Smith's a solid player. They've got a lot of depth, and Rick Pitino is going to get some tests this week. They play Wagner on Wednesday. which isn't really a test. But this coming Sunday, they host New Mexico at the Garden. Mexico beat UCLA to begin the year. And, of course, that's the battle of the Patinos, Rick versus Richard. Now, the AP poll is not out yet. With all the losses that happened, I would think St. John's might be ranked this week. That hasn't happened in a long time. I think, again, since last I was in school. Remember their freshman year, my freshman year, they were ranked. Might have been actually my senior year, too. But St. John's will have its test, starting with New Mexico Sunday, and then they will get out to Bahamas to play in Baylor, Tennessee, Virginia, and we'll see really how good this team is, but not a bad start for them at all. They're 2-0. Rutgers has only played one game, I believe, since we last were here. They beat Wagner 75-52 last Wednesday. They will host St. Peter's tonight, and they will host Monmouth on Friday. Rutgers doesn't really have any huge tests coming up until later this week, but a couple of teams locally picked up some good, exciting wins in upset fashion. And one of those was out in Villanova. Columbia and Jim Ingles' squad gets 22 from Geronimo Rubio de la Rosa. What a name. To win 90-80. The Cal Neptunes had a dreadful turn at Villanova. And for Columbia to find a way to win that game, again, very impressive performance. The Lions weren't even picked near the Ivy League to really do much. So props to them to getting a win. And the other team that had a good win last night or this weekend was Marist. They beat Richmond in the A-10, 22 points from Josh Pasquarelli. Central Connecticut in the NEC, I went over St. Joe's. If you're going in terms of upsets, bye game upsets kind of thing, as John Rothstein says, losing a bye game is the epitome of brutality. But that's where we are. In Syracuse, they almost had a bad bye loss. They lost to they didn't lose, but it felt like they lost. They took on Lemoyne, and Lemoyne gave them everything they could ask for. Syracuse won 86-82. Jair Davis off the bench had 22 points for the Orange. Syracuse did have 4 or 5 players in double figures, but just made 4 threes. They got to get better with their three-point shooting. They will play Colgate on Tuesday and Youngstown State on Saturday at the Dome before they play Texas at the UKG Legends Classic at Barclays next Thursday. And finally, the Mets and the Yankees setting up meetings with Juan Soto. Steve Cohen's going to fly out to California. So is Hal Steinbrenner. Aaron Boone said today the Yankees had their end-of-season press conference, if you will. And I'll give you some notes from that because I didn't know they were going to have this press conference. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here as we wrap up the show. Some notes from that I think stood out. One, Aaron Boone saying today that he's going to have at least one coaching change on his coaching staff next year. Wouldn't say who that was. I don't like when coaches do that. Like Matt Eberflus, I'll give him for Chicago saying we got to get another offensive play caller, but you don't officially make a move. I would rather Aaron Boone make the move and then say we're going to make the change, rather than say, oh, I know what changes we're probably going to make, but I'm not telling you yet. Hopefully he's talked about that behind the scenes, but I think damn when that happens. They picked up his option right now for next year. There's no talk of an extension. I doubt the Yankees are going to allow Aaron Boone to coach on a lame duck contract. Brian Cashman has talked about wanting to have Aaron Boone for 10 years. Next year would be his 8th year. I could see Boone getting 2 more years to try to figure this out and get that title. They want him to have that long-term success. The other big news, Jason Dominguez, Aaron Boone said, is going to be a part of this team next year. I'd hope so, because you didn't play him at the end of this past year. If Soto stays, if Dominguez, I think, is your opening day left fielder. If he doesn't stay, you have to decide what Dominguez is. Is he going to play center? Is he going to play left? Are you going to judge back to right? A lot of things in play. Yankees, John Morosi talked about this past week. We're looking at relief pitching aggressively. They do need relievers because Tommy Kahnle is a free agent. Clay Holmes is a free agent. Tim Hill is a free agent. They're going to have to rework this bullpen. That's why, again, if you sign Soto, if you're the Yankees, and you give him 40+ mil, that's the situation. Yes, you saved money with Garrett Cole opting into the contract and not getting the next year or reworking the deal. But if you give Soto 40 mil and Hal doesn't want to go over that Steve Cohen tax, you're kind of limited to what you do. So if you have to decide for the Yankees, do you want to get Soto and really just a couple tertiary pieces, or do you want to actually get 3 or 4 pieces, but at the same time, the Yankees tried that when they lost Cano, and it kind of backfired on them back in the early 2010s. So there's not really a complete philosophy. It sounds like the Soto stuff, maybe the winter meetings is where the latest it goes. So Soto, I don't think Scott Boras will hold up the market, but we shall see on that front. But again, we'll talk baseball on this show, but we'll try to save it till when we get some free agent signings. But I figured since Boone spoke about a couple hours ago, it'd be a good thing to bring up the Yankees today on the show. But we wrap up episode 4 here on New York State of Sports. And again, it's all about, to me, the football teams and what their long-term future is. Like, we know the Giants and Jets are not going anywhere this year. But what does 25 look like? If you're a Jets fan, you want your 25 team to take a play and probably this week. You've got to figure out, okay, how are we going to in the Red Bull. That could be fun. I would love to get to that game. It could be a fun matchup. The NBA, of course, Knicks are trying to get